So you've finished your embroidery, you've worked really hard, and now you would like to frame it. But how do you go about framing so that it doesn't crinkle and wrinkle when it's put into the frame? What we're going to learn today is how to lace, which is a relatively quick way of mounting your work. If you have a pre-bought frame, you can use the backing that comes in this frame to wrap your fabric around. In this case today, I'm going to show you how to wrap around a piece of cordboard. First of all, we need to measure the size of our embroidery that we're going to be mounting. If you have a pre-bought frame, then that board has already been cut out for you. If not, you're going to measure and decide on what size you would like that rebate to be before you mount it and take it to your framer. Just lay a pin in where those measurements are, then you can measure across in both directions to figure out the size of the board that you'll be using. In this case, I am 7 by 7 inches square. Then place the board underneath, and using those pins that are marking the size, you can pin those into the side of your core board. This way you've got equal distance all the way around the embroidery. And then from there, we're going to pin on the grain of the fabric, so where you see the nice straight line. Some fabrics it's hard to see, so you'll be playing a little bit by eye. You're going to pin along one side from the center out into the core board, and then you'll do the opposite side, pulling a little bit tighter. You can readjust this pin so that the grain is nice and straight, but also the fabric is stretching out nice and tight. You want to work your way from the center out. Some fabrics need a little more pulling, and if you have a tightly stitched embroidery, you'll need to pull a little further as well so that you get it nice and flat. I'm going to do the sides. I'm not pulling too tight on this first side because there's a lot of give on this other one. I will do that once I get round to it so that it's nice and equally pulled out. You want to make sure that the grain is staying nice and straight. As straight as you can get it. So I'm pinning all the way around up to the corners as well, like so. Now we're going to turn over and fold in the corners to miter these together. So I'm just going to fold in. First of all, I've got a right angle, then I'm folding into the center, and I'm leaving a channel down between my fold here so that when I stitch I can lace this together. So what we're doing here is pulling the fabric nice and taut across the board, and then we're going to be mitering the corners and lacing the back. I'll be showing you this using a dark thread so you can clearly see the stitches. I'm using a buttonhole thread. This is either known as carpet thread. Buttonhole thread is extremely strong. You only need to use a single strand of it. And I'm using a curved needle. If you have a curved needle, that's great. You can use an ordinary embroidery needle as well, which is a little trickier to do because you have to stitch flat, but we'll go over that. So I'm going to start by just stitching into my first fold here. I'm over sewing a couple of times. I can take the pins out. And I'm just over sewing to make a nice strong holding stitch. I've got a tiny little knot in there, and now I'm ready to stitch up to the corner to miter this corner closed. I'm going to be using a slip stitch or a ladder stitch by coming into the fold not through the two folds there, but just the crease of that fold. I come up, I now go to the opposite side. And if I bring this up close to the camera, you'll see that I'm going through just the crease, not through the two layers of the fold. Stitch through, onto the opposite side, short stitch, try and keep your stitches all the same length, and through. I'm not pulling tight yet because I want you to see where the stitches lay before I do that. So you'll see that we're creating this little ladder down towards the point, and you want to get into the very, very tip, like so. And then when I pull tight, that crease or the channel will close and you get a nice flat finish. I'm just going to turn my work here, and then I'm going to go across to the opposite side and slip my needle down as far as I can get it to go and pull tight. I'll oversew at the end one more time. Be careful not to whip around all your pins, and then trim away the tail. We're going to repeat that on all four corners before we start pulling tight with the lacing. It's a good idea to have a piece of tissue paper down on the tabletop to protect your work. I've not done that because it makes a lot of noise on the video here. Now I'm just going to show you working with a straight needle. So same thing, oversew the end first. To get nice and tight hold, I can remove my pins. And now I'm going to stitch up through that channel. Stitch on one side, then across to the other, stitching into just the crease of that fold. These stitches will obviously get covered by being in the back of your frame, but you can also, in another little video, we'll show you how to back a piece of embroidery. So up to the point, pull as tight as you can, and then slip down on the opposite side. Let the needle travel down and pull through and oversew at the end here. Like so. Once you've done that, you can cut away your tail and fold in the other two corners. Now for the lacing part, we're going to be going across back and forth, and it's a very tight thread that we're pulling. It wants to sound like guitar strings. I'm going to use a much longer length of my thread, and again I'm still using just a single strand. I'm going to tie a knot in the end there, and now I'm ready to lace back and forth. I'm pulling against the pins that are holding your embroidery in place. We're going to start with a knot, and again oversewing just so that your thread stays in place. You want to be careful not to whip around your pins there, like so. I'm now going to work across the back and scoop up some of that fabric. And work my way back and forth. Just a couple of times. And then once I've got across a few times, I'm going to pull nice and tight and hold that tension in the thread, and then over sew, just keep that tension in place. You want it to be as tight as possible because it will pull out all the creases and wrinkles on the front. Like so. Then I'm going to position myself to get ready to go across again, scooping up just a short amount of distance there. And again, a couple more stitches before I'm ready to tighten that up so that you keep all the tension nice and taut. You'll see that on the front of the work, this is pulling across to be very, very tight. Once you've done that direction, you will go in the opposite and do the same across this way. Once you've got all the way across, like a grid, you can then pull out your pins, and then you'll be ready for backing the embroidery. Like I said at the beginning, this is a quick and easy method for lacing an embroidery to be nice and taut around a board. Here's an example of one that we have at the school. It's the three-dimensional one. So when we're stitching something with 3D elements to it, you want to create a little pillow of bubble wrap that you can then lay your board onto so it's sitting up from the surface, and that window in the bubble wrap will protect your three-dimensional elements. And we've laced this in the same way. It's a round core board. If you want to lace for a longer existence of your embroideries, we teach classes in mounting on archival card, covering the fabric. So do check out our calendar and our upcoming classes on our website at www.sfsnad.org. Thank you.